Welcome back. As you know, Parliament's sitting in Canberra. One of our favourite Pollies from the other side, now in opposition, used to be in government. Ed Husic. Well, he was the man who fought for the inquiry that exposed how we were being ripped off by overseas software companies, and they pushed to bring the price down. Well, there's been reports in the past week that under the new trade agreement we're trying to do, called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, that might actually increase prices. I thought this might rile Ed, all his good work, and let's find out how it's all going down there with the new government. Ed Husic in Canberra. Hi, Ed.
Good evening, Janine. How you doing?
Good. How is it? Fun to be on the other side or depressing?
Do I have to answer that question?
No, all right. Let's go into
Just
the
before,
serious.
now hang on a second, before you go on, you have your rants, I want to have a Twitter moment here.
Yeah.
I tweeted, this thing, social media, that you refuse to engage in.
That's right, I've heard about it.
I tweeted that I'd be on here with you, and someone said, Princess Janine, you rock.
Right.
On Twitter.
Okay, that's sort of a half good, half bad. I thought you wouldn't put out anything too bad, because not a good way to start the interview insulting the host, but that's just an old tip.
I'm not insulting. I'm telling you the love that exists for Janine Perrett and social media.
Princess Janine? I'll let that one go through to the keeper. Now, let's start with an interesting thing that made me think of you. Well, firstly, tell us what happened. We know we covered this inquiry you had into software prices. You brought out your report right at the end of your term of government, so it's sitting there. What happens to that now? What do you expect? I mean, I presume you still push from the other side of the aisle, and it was a bipartisan committee, wasn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely was, and it's now in the hands of the coalition government, who indicated that they would be assessing the report and making a response in due course, which basically means that they haven't got their head around it yet, and they'll let us know what they think in the new year. In the interim, you made reference to the fact that the trade talks are taking place, the Trans-Pacific Partnership talks, which I understood from my discussions with then Trade Minister Craig Emerson were some time off in terms of conclusion, but there's a whole lot of speculation about not only when they would be finalised, but the impact that would have on issues that you and I have discussed, particularly in terms of pricing.
Was this something you were aware of before? Because there's been a bit of consternation about the leak, a bit specifically about the fact it could send up software prices, among a host of other things they said. But did you ever get any warning in those trade talks, in the early stages of the TPP, this might be an issue, or in any other trade agreement?
Well, I'm staggered on two counts. Firstly, we had the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade brief the committee during its deliberations in the lead up to the release of the report, saying that the government had actually put on the table, the federal Labor government had put on the bargaining table, the need to look at the impact of price discrimination by US IT firms and how it was impacting our economy, which didn't impress, from what I'm led to believe from my sources, the US. But we, were signalling that this was an issue, and in November of last year, it was put on the table for one of the subcommittees that was discussing it, and I think off the top of my head it was discussed in the Auckland round of the talks. Now, with the election, I understand two things. One is the government's keen to see this agreement finalised, even though I think it's some time off. And two, we've had a watering down of the position where we're quite happy to strengthen copyright and IP protection along the lines of what the US want, which is bad news for consumers, because what I'm finding is IP is being used as a fairly shabby form of protectionism to basically strengthen the hand of the US firms that have been ripping us off blind for quite some time on digital downloads of software and hardware, which the committee found, as you know, was 50 to...
Yeah, but to be fair, I just have to break in there. To be fair, even you've acknowledged this is a leak at the moment, and the final draft's a long way up. So, I mean, I think it's important to warn against it, or you'll find they just get thrown in. But I would have thought that the fact that you had the committee, I mean, it's ludicrous to think we haven't even got to the point we've exposed a problem that they're too high. Before we can bring them down, they're talking about putting them up again. It would, in a way, it might help, because it might pressure them to do something before they sign the agreement on what you were recommending, won't it? As in, bring the prices down to be more competitive before they do it.
Well, I think that certainly having the pressure on trade agreements should be about freeing up trade, not about reinforcing an imbalance in the relationship where US firms are effectively price discriminating against us and having an impact on our economy, particularly in terms of affecting the costs for business here in Australia.
Did you ever find in your deliberations that the previous, our free trade agreement specifically with the US, was that in any way responsible for the price problem we've got?
Well, we actually fought some discriminatory practices that existed in the area of copyright and how it impacted on, for example, regional coding with DVDs. That occurred back in the early, it would have been 2004, I think, when it was being negotiated at that point, and we were able to see an end to that. But this is now morphed in different ways with technology evolving, and firms, as I said, was making reference to earlier, where there's this huge difference in price on digital downloads where you can't explain why that difference exists.
No, and I think
it's really just done because they can get away with it.
And that's why I wanted to keep up the pressure. I did think it was ridiculous we were talking about hiking them when we already have them too high. A couple of other quick stories. Another issue that brings in these arrogant IT companies, and it's a worldwide issue. There's been a bit of consternation everywhere that they're not paying enough tax, Google and others. Your government was talking about cracking down, though we need a worldwide crackdown. Last week, Kerry Stokes came out strongly against Google in particular and the others, saying they not only are not paying enough tax, they're making it uncompetitive and it's not fair, the advantage to Australia. Now, where do you think the government stands on this? Because there were indications they might be going a bit backwards. Do you think, Kerry Stokes might need to give them a kick?
Two things. If you've got a Conservative Prime Minister in the UK saying this is an issue, and you had Labor in government saying it's an issue, this is free of politics. It's recognised that the way a lot of multinationals are able to effectively I should take that back, but they're able to effectively select countries where they can get a better deal on their tax.
They can be very creative.
and the Levin inquiry in the United States, the Senate inquiry that saw that Apple, for instance, at some point there was no country that they could point to that they were registered for the purpose of taxation. So, I
understand that we've seen the history of it. What I just want to know, and just because we're running out of time, are you worried that the new government is going to water down that?
Yes, they in actual fact turned their back on, from what I understand, $700 million in tax revenue in not pursuing this issue of transfer pricing, which Joe Hockey and Malcolm Turnbull both agreed in government, in opposition, was an issue, and now in government are walking away from. So if David Cameron thinks it's an issue, I don't know why Joe Hockey doesn't.
Yeah, no, I must admit, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about that. I was a bit surprised. I thought they had been there. We're literally out of time, but I have to ask you, as a Kevin Rudd supporter, you were sorry to see his resignation, or do you think, as one of the younger bright hopes of the new Labor, is it time to move on and for a new Labor Party there?
He made a decision based on his own circumstances. I was sorry to see him go. He had a big impact in terms of our fortunes. While obviously we didn't win the election, there are, I'd say, 25 people sitting in the House of Representatives as Labor MPs as a result, in part, of his return and what that did in terms of our electoral fortunes. And he had a big impact on like charting us through the GFC and obviously the apology of the stolen generation. So, he did some big things as PM, and he'll be missed. But
you're all behind Bill Shorten now, I guess.
Well, key for us is to be unified. People have been saying that disunity cost us in a big way in the last term, and we've been working pretty effectively together in this term, but it's hard going as opposition. Oh, it is, but I'm sure you'll do a good job. Lovely to talk to you again. Good luck. Keep up the good fight on software. We will be talking to you again, no doubt. Goodbye, Ed Husic. Thanks, Janine. Western Sydney Labor MP, Ed Husic. And that's it for tonight, but tomorrow night, last show of the